I'm Will.
And I'm Ryan.
And welcome to the Walnut Desk podcast. Today we are going to be discussing something that appears in everybody's life a lot. I think maybe even a lot more than we notice. And it is the placebo effect.
Bum, bum, bum. I feel like, so I've got the definitions up of the placebo effect, and it's counter, the nocebo effect. So, placebo, which comes from the Latin I shall please, is a substance or treatment with no active therapeutic effect. So basically when given to someone as a control, sugar pills, whatever, that person is given an expectation that this drug is going to do something specific. And with the sugar pill, with the placebo effect, it can still have some positive impact with what they expect.
Measurable.
Scientifically measurable.
Impact.
So it's basically like there's no way the thing that you're consuming, the little pill you're putting in your mouth, whatever it is, can have the effect you expect. And because you expect it, it does.
Right. So you're looking for a result. You basically trick yourself and your body and your feelings into getting better when there's really no active change to any biochemistry. There's no therapeutic effect, right? Just as the definition says.
Mm-hmm. And as we'll see as this episode unfolds, the placebo effect, impacts areas of our lives that are way beyond medication.
Exactly.
But the nocebo effect.
Yeah, that's what I'm most interested in, because this is actually a new idea to me.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating. So go for it.
So the nocebo effect definition, it happens when a negative expectation of a phenomenon causes it to have more of a negative effect than it otherwise would.
Huh.
So it compounds negative impact. And the Latin phrase, or the Latin word nocebo means I harm. So I please and I harm are the two things, placebo and nocebo.
Can you give an example of the nocebo effect?
Yeah, let's do one example. What does it say here? Pain. Verbal suggestion can cause an increased sensitivity to pain and perception that a tactile stimulus is painful just by suggesting that someone's going to receive pain.
So if I say, watch out, it's going to hurt,
Yep.
it might actually increase the way it actually hurts your brain's perception of the external stimulus.
Which might be why doctors, when they're about to give you an injection, say this is only going to pinch. They give you a specific type of pain to hone in on to try and reduce your expectation of pain, to give you something concrete.
So would that be considered a placebo effect? I guess we would have to come up with the objective pain value, which kind of gets to the heart of the placebo effect's problem, is that really the placebo effect exists more in cases where the thing that you're measuring is subjective.
Right.
Like, this pill made me less sad, therefore it worked.
Right.
And you're coming up with that level of sadness on a personal scale of 1 to 10.
Or this pill increased my sex drive.
Yeah, and that's a crazy market. I mean, like, you go to any gas station and there's these libido boosters that are full of all kinds of who knows what's in it. Ground up rhino horn and leopard spot fur.
Lion's heart.
Yeah. Heart of a lion. Mane of a grizzly.
Mm-hmm. So what we're going to do is we're going to unpack some ways that we think the placebo effect impacts our daily lives.
Yeah. So let's start with just a few that we've discovered just from research and that we've noticed in day-to-day life. Listening to podcasts, in addition to making podcasts, is a hobby of mine. And I recall hearing back in the day, and I don't like that I can't give a citation to which podcast it was. I believe it was either a Freakonomics or a Radiolab podcast, two of my favorites, that discussed elevator buttons. And how the door close button in an elevator is merely there to give you something to do while the timer runs out for the door to close.
Wait, it doesn't do anything?
No, it doesn't do anything. You press it once, it is not wired to a single mechanism in the elevator whatsoever.
It seems like that would be so easy to rig up. Like, to just have it actually be a working button, right?
Right. But then you get into the whole social dynamic of it, of like people who want to ride the elevator alone. If that button actually worked, you might end up with like a jam up of people refusing to let other people join their elevator cart.
That would be me. I mean, we talked about this on the groceries podcast, but I don't really want to be around strangers very often. So The only time that I have ever pressed that button, it hasn't been because I'm like impatient and waiting to go. It's because I see someone walking toward the elevator, and I'm like, I do not want to be on the elevator with this person.
You're a real class act, Mr. So when you press that button, you just press it once and hope that it works, or do you mash on that button? That button. You hope that by pressing it 12 times, it closes 12 times as fast.
Yeah, I've never pressed it just once.
So were you aware that that button does nothing?
No. Absolutely not.
So I have been fully aware that that button does nothing for years, and have had a hunch that that button does nothing just based on, experience for longer than that. I still press that button every time I get in the elevator.
Why? Habit?
Because I think that it makes me feel better.
Right.
I think that despite even knowing that it is a placebo button, there's something routine about it. Maybe I'm just used to it, habit.
Okay, because this is something I want to talk about as we go on. But in what you're saying, there's an element to knowing it's having no effect on the exterior world. Doing it anyway because it has an internal pleasure response that makes you feel better, puts you in a better mood.
Right. It eases my nerves. It gives me something to do and think about while I'm in an elevator. I don't think about how scary it is that I'm in a box that has a big lead counterweight somewhere like in the middle of a building somewhere, and that I'm basically counterbalanced with a mechanism that is very archaic when you think about the design of an elevator. And we'll put a link in the video version of the podcast for just like a diagram of what an elevator looks like if you haven't seen it, but it's pretty old school invention. They've been around for a while and they haven't really changed much.
No, they haven't. So it's like another question that I kind of want to keep going throughout is, do you think in that situation specifically, do you think that knowing that you are making a decision to ritualize experience in such a way that you are enacting the placebo effect, do you think your awareness of it diminishes its value or return?
No, not really. I mean, the value of it would be that the door closes faster, and it doesn't.
No, but the real value is that you feel better.
I feel better. Yeah, no, I don't think it makes me feel less good knowing that it doesn't work. I think for me is mostly, now that I'm talking through this right now, is just a routine thing. You come in, you press your button, you look out, make sure no one's coming. I just like tap on the door close button a couple times in case between the time that, I heard about this placebo button.
Yeah.
And today, they've installed some sort of firmware update that makes the thing work.
Right. Who knows? It could work.
One day.
Someday.
So I have a question for you. Now that you know that button does nothing, you said you've only pressed it when people are coming towards you.
Yeah.
Are you going to continue to press the elevator button knowing it does nothing in hopes that maybe that door will close just in time for you to ride alone and have a moment to breathe?
I think there are two ways to try to unpack that question. One is, in the moment when I see somebody that I don't want to be on an elevator with, will I instinctively start to do it again? Maybe.
Right. That's, I think, where I'm hanging right now. And the instinctive ground is like, okay, cool, here we go.
Yeah. But there's another question, which is like, do I think that I see somebody it's giving me anxiety that they're about to jump on this elevator with me? I press the button. Do I know that that's going to make me feel a little bit better? That I've like taken some action, I've exerted some fake control over the situation, and that's going to give me like a little bit of a pleasure response or a little bit of like endorphin release that's going to dissipate my anxiety? Is that possible? And I can use that purposefully? I would totally still do that.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
But the other one might just happen because of like habit.
And I think habit and placebo effect are I think they're connected in a very significant way. Another example that we came across of the placebo effect is, and I'm sure everyone has had this experience, especially on older computers, especially on back when we were running Windows 95 and you're installing a program. How many times did you plug in your Oregon Trail remastered disc and wait for it to load, and it installs to 90% just like that? And then the last 10%, for some reason, of the software takes 5 to 10 minutes. And you quickly wonder, does that progress bar actually measure the progress of the installation?
Yeah, I've been super skeptical about that. I feel like that's why Mac goes to like the wheel the cursor wheel, because it's not a progress bar anymore. It just says we're waiting.
It's going to take some time.
Yeah.
We're just going to let you know it's going to take some time.
Seems more honest.
But assigning an arbitrary value to it makes us feel better.
Yes.
It shows us that something is happening.
Mm-hmm. And there's an end.
Different from what there was before, and exactly, you nailed it. There's an end.
I like that. Here's a question. Do you think, okay, so the Mac beach ball spinning thing, right? Versus a progress bar. Do you have a better user experience with the progress bar or the spinning beach ball?
The spinning beach ball scares the living shit out of me. I think that my computer is hung up and needs to be rebooted every single time I see it. And that might be like just experience with the old, like sitting in the back of your elementary classroom Macs that just never worked the right way.
Yeah.
And I think I've been scarred.
Those different colored iMacs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the progress bar does. And it really is probably a completely different team that is in charge of running the progress bar. I bet it doesn't even speak to the install at all. I bet there's a graphic development team that is like, we need a progress bar, and then there's the software install team who's writing the back end code, and they go, well, we need to install the software, so this is the visual that you get while any sort of process is happening back there.
And is it true that the fact of the situation is that the only time that the progress bar reflects what's really going on is when it's over? So potentially the only signal it really gets from the internal process is now it's done.
Now it's done. Yeah, because then it would have to obviously trigger a new event.
Interesting. This is similar to the elevator button in a way, because it would be so easy to make a working version.
Yeah.
But
it seems like a cop-out, and you wonder why. And some of the stuff, I mean, some of the progress bars do work. Like when you're downloading a file, there's a very clear start and end to that file. But as far as like a process running, there's very little way that an install can really know the exact processing power and make an accurate real-time analysis of how long it's going to take.
Like back in the day when you're like reinstalling Windows 98 for the fifth time because it doesn't work, or Windows NT, you know.
This podcast is just going to be about all of our bad end user experiences with old Windows products.
Everyone loved
Pentium
2s, NT, though. Right?
That's true.
Wasn't that the good one?
98 was good.
98
I
was
like
good.
98. I don't think I ever used NT.
I haven't used.
But I did use a Pentium 2. And that was a doozy.
All right, so what else do you got for me?
We came across a New York Times article stating that the crosswalk buttons in New York City have not worked for over 30 years.
Whoa. Does that mean that they just don't have any effect?
Correct.
Or does it mean that, like, because there are two ways that I would assume a crosswalk button could function. One would be you press it and it actually accelerates the light changing situation to make you more able to cross. And the other one is to just alert you when you're able to.
And I think the case in New York City is the second point that you made.
So
they are in such a high population dense area that they just need to set everything to a timer, goes in a cycle. The buttons don't impact that timer because typically they've got down that at 4 o'clock, X people, the traffic engineers, X people need to cross at a rate of, this many people per minute, and they try to solve the traffic problem with consistency.
Right. Because that's in San Francisco here, near here, where we work, is, like, that's true. There's no button pressing, right? I think in, like, downtown San Francisco, you just wait. There's no button.
I think there might be a button. I think it might be under a similar similar thing.
Right. I haven't noticed a button.
Yeah, well, because there's so many people, you wouldn't even need to. You kind of just wait. And maybe that's a play-in of why it doesn't work, is if there's a huge crowd there, who is Neo for the traffic block button?
Who is chosen?
Who steps out of the matrix and realizes that someone's got to press this button? If that were the case, we might be standing there for a long time. But I do know that the crosswalk buttons in smaller, low traffic areas, they do have an effect. This is my N=1, but I have a crosswalk 4-way intersection right near my house, and it will only turn white if someone has pressed the button.
Okay.
And it will definitely accelerate and change the outcome of the intersection if there are more than one person waiting or things like that.
Okay, so let's take a switch here and try to unpack some other ways in which this impacts our daily life. Do you think, because I do, just sort of instinctually, we're not going on numbers here, but what about dietary choices, and when you start to eat certain foods and exercise in certain ways, like jump on one of these like paleo diets, right? It obviously does have an effect on your body.
Right.
Whether it's positive or negative.
Right.
Eating differently changes you differently.
Hands down, for sure. Because everything you put in your body has to run through a process.
But we all determine what it means to quote unquote like feel healthy or feel like we're at our most healthy point in different ways. And are there ways in which dietary choices, do you think, do or don't have a placebo effect, or if it's like just real?
Yeah. I think, first of all, there's a lot of science that has not come out yet about food. I know that we've been studying like the microbiome for not that long, and our digestive tract is a large ecosystem of bacteria that are either beneficial or harmful. And you've been on antibiotics for a sinus infection or antibiotics for any other sort of ailment, you can kind of throw your whole system out of whack, which is why they recommend you eat like yogurt or sauerkraut or something after you've gone on to medication like that. So I think in that sense, there are definitely some stuff that is scientifically proven to not be a placebo effect. But I agree with you in saying that it's more of the routine change and ascribing to a brand or a tribe or joining a community that all claim similar health benefits from this that I think can manifest as the placebo effect for sure.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
I don't know. I feel like, it feels like it's got to be a mix. I feel like it's like with the nocebo, the situation is that it is a negative effect, but that effect is exacerbated.
Right.
So I feel like it might be true in dietary situations that like you make a change in any way and then it has a positive effect or it has an effect and you turn it positive in your head. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it does something and you either make that effect stronger or it just is baseline and you stay the same and feel the same.
Right. So have you personally tried any dietary things that you think have worked in a placebo way?
Oh, for sure. I have tried to cut like processed food and refined carbs out of my diet for like weeks at a time.
Yeah.
And like if I want to have a drink at night, it's like a diet soda and vodka, know, and instead of a beer, or just shying away from like eating the bread on my sandwich, like eat just the meats and have some lettuce and more fats and proteins. And I noticed the difference for sure in energy levels. Like they weren't necessarily higher, but they were like more consistent. Like I wasn't, but then you go and you read the science, you're like, oh, well, your blood sugar is not spiking, therefore that's why you feel this way. And there's definitely a placebo effect in there some way. I don't know how large.
Right.
There's no way for me to know, except for that I felt better for a little while.
Yeah.
It is a completely unsustainable diet in our modern era without extreme discipline.
Yeah.
Which I lost after going to the doctor. Funny bringing placebo effect into the diet, but I went to the doctor and I got 3 shots because I haven't had immunizations in years. So I had to get like a tetanus shot. They made me take a flu shot and a 3rd shot. I don't remember. Yeah, that's really healthy that I don't know what went into my body. But I got immediately like super sick after that for about 24 hours. And my self-discipline came crashing down and I cooked a whole box of mac and cheese and decided that, I was working a little bit too hard for the benefit.
I feel like my daily dietary experience is a microcosm of exactly that. Like I wake up in the morning, eat a super healthy breakfast with very low carbs. By lunch, I'm like, I'm gonna have a sandwich, and by dinner, I'm like, pizza.
And it works. And you feel better when you reward yourself for
And like so back to the
day.
What we do and don't know, right? Back to that question. Like, are we ultimately in a big way sort of like, because the way I see like diets working culturally, right, is like somebody does some amount of research into something. They release a book about the positive effects on your well-being and your health that this specific diet can have based on their research. But that research isn't really complete yet most of the time.
Right.
So what we end up doing is we end up changing our diet drastically based on the first few steps in a line of research that is going to be incomplete for years. So like the leading edge of dietary innovation is kind of just like fumbling around in the dark, like a drunk teenager hooking up in the backseat of a car, trying to find like the best thing, but who knows the long-term health effects, right? So like who knows if the paleo diet is going to actually cause you to die at like 65 because of heart failure, you're not taking in enough like carb and fat or something like that,
right?
Or your brain just like farts out at like 76 years old because you have early onset,
which is why these
Alzheimer's.
Exactly, like these trendy things, right, sometimes fly in the face of research as well. So there's an interesting study from like 1995. It was a child health study.
Okay.
Where kids were given placebo sweets and real sweets, and were seen to see if there was an increase in hyperactivity, right? The story is you give your kid a piece of cake at a birthday party, they run around that crazy.
Yeah.
You caused that behavior by feeding them and filling them up with sugar. And like, we know scientifically that sugar is not super good for you. We're learning more about it as we go. However, they're saying that there's a lot of confirmation bias in old wives' tales and, like speaking circles, where there was very little evidence to suggest that sugar caused hyperactivity. The study said that most causes of hyperactivity could be explained in other ways, which is like a way of saying that maybe when you give the kid some sugar, you are looking more closely for them to exhibit signs of hyperactivity, and therefore you confirm your suspicion that the sugar caused it.
Interesting. Right, which is somewhere between placebo and nocebo and like the psychological impact of your interpretation. But like, okay, so that's interesting. I mean, because I've always thought of sugar as a kid as like training addictive personalities. Basically parents give their kids sugar, and that sets your sort of like reward system association culturally up with, cigarettes have the same reward system.
Right.
Alcohol gives you the same reward system.
It's true. Well, it's not that the sugar doesn't impact your biochemistry.
Right,
It definitely does. It is hardwired into us that when we find a tree of berries in the wilderness, we should probably eat some of those because, hey, last winter was pretty hard.
Exactly.
It definitely has a dopamine response similar to cigarettes, similar to alcohol.
Yep.
What it's saying is the outcome of that dopamine response is not hyperactivity. It doesn't provide instant fuel to go terrorize the neighbor's cat.
But the old wives' tale says it does.
Says it does. So it continues to be passed down as knowledge. And again, that study is about 20 years old.
Right.
So we could be well past that, but there were no current retractions or amendments to that link, and I think they're a pretty reputable source.
And this is getting into a territory that I think, I want to pursue further, which is when we talk about like old wives' tale beliefs, cultural, like established cultural beliefs about a way a thing works. And we're trying to relate that to the placebo effect. I think the thing that we have to unpack here is like the placebo effect is defined as that, you get some sort of like, whether it's a pill or like a ritualized experience, you do something, you have an expectation, that expectation is fulfilled because you had it, right? Placebo effect.
Yes.
But superstition does come in because it sets up the expectation that you have going into a specific situation. So that's a cultural influence on the placebo effect that is happening every day.
That's real too.
And I want to talk about this like superstition side of it, because if placebo is the momentary experience of like a stimulus, right? If the placebo is like, I consume a glass of water and it makes me have more energy or makes me feel like I'm a dolphin, right? If that's like the effect that it has because of my expectation, then the thing we really have to unpack is what's governing our expectations and how much. And going back to the other question that I had which was like, so if you have these webs of like superstition that are governing the placebo effect because they're setting up your expectations, if you're aware of them, does it have less of an impact? Or can we sort of mold these ritualizations and these superstitions to be super productive for us?
Have we evolved to the point where we can leverage our knowledge of the placebo effect to have positive outcomes?
Right. And like be more honest with ourselves about it, because I feel like it would get a lot of weird things out of the way. Like positive and negative feelings about pseudosciences, positive and negative feelings about sort of religious ritualization, because if it works for you and you're aware that it works for you, but you're also aware that it's made up or like it's based on something that is not provable in science
or antiquated or just ritualized, serialized belief,
then can you just, as a person who wants to be sort of like, you know, like I'm pretty agnostic / atheist, right? If I'm a person who wants to be sort of as informed as possible, does that decision now involve manipulating my beliefs such that I have the most positive placebo effects on a daily basis?
I think that's a really good to bring it up, because I think a lot of these, you know, pseudoscientific rituals, routines, ideas, and practices are not harmful in themselves if you feel like they work for you. They're pretty low stakes. Like if you have a handful of healing crystals and you like to hold on to them because you read a book that said that like this purple one will ease your anxiety, and if you cover the outside of your property with quartz, the vampires will stay away. Like whatever, you know, it's pretty benign you might be spending a little bit of money here and there at a store from someone who sells these things, but it's not going to harm anybody. I think the issue comes when you start to evangelize that and spread that message as the only way to keep vampires out of your life, because we're all so scared of vampires, is to surround your property in quartz, and you become the knowledge source for that, and then push that opinion on someone who it may not work for.
Right, or who doesn't want to receive that.
Exactly.
Or, so I'm going to try and root this in specifics. So, like, the crystals is good.
Yeah. I think that's a big one.
When I lived in Western Massachusetts, there were a lot of people who took the crystal thing seriously to one degree or another. Right. Also, like, I know that this is more on the semi-provable side, but, like, acupuncture, or even we can start getting into things like astrology, where you give an exterior system of generating meaning the authority to impact your daily experience,
right?
To govern your placebo effect,
right?
Is how I would say that works.
And I see astrology as like 96% bullshit,
right?
But I do think that there is an odd thing that has to do with, there's no way that lunar phases don't impact our physiology in some way.
Absolutely.
We've evolved having push and pull of gravity, and it affects at the very least, it affects our environment in a way that we need to adapt to, whether high tides or low tides or weather patterns even. I don't know much about the science. I think the only thing really I could give astrology credit for, because the only thing that seems like it's not completely made up, is that the moon is moving around us and is like impacting that kind of,
I agree entirely.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah,
if it's brighter at night, it changes something about your melatonin level if you're sleeping outside, right? You're having bright light in your eyes. And I think that is real. Do I think that being under the moving house sign of Virgo and, on Tuesday the 14th is going to make me more or less likely to succeed in my job interview? Fuck no.
No, probably not. But here's the thing. If you believe that, and
could I leverage it?
You go into your job interview, then you're back in the button pressing situation, because you're sitting in the waiting room about to go to your job interview, and you think, all right, I have this rising sign, whatever. This says that today I have a higher chance of succeeding at this job interview. Maybe you set it up for that day specifically, and while you're waiting, you just like feel more confident slightly. People read that when you walk into a room. Like, it affects your body language, which affects how people receive you, right?
Right, which is all real, right? It's all about how do I get myself into the best mental space so that the physical response to stress, the confidence level that you have is the highest. And if reading those posts does that for you, that's all good. The issue is actually twofold with something like astrology. Would be whoever writes these things in their ivory tower and passes them down to websites and books and things. Make them very generally broad, but don't typically always make them positive. And if you are starting to read like, this is a bad week for you to go outdoors, that's a point where you're now getting into a nocebo effect of the same thing, where you now think, not only am I feeling pretty crappy today, but my horoscope is confirming that. And if you're not the right kind of person who would say, oh, it's cool, it's just the stars that are doing that, I'm going to lay low for a little while and everything's going to be cool, you might be like, this small bit of stress I'm having is only going to get worse on Thursday, and I am in a crippling bed of depression now.
Yeah, what if you're battling agoraphobia, and then you get that, and you just stay inside for 2 weeks? There goes all the work you've been doing for X months, right?
Right.
Yeah, so it does have negative. It has nocebo effects as well. And so, like, astrology, one of the interesting things to me about it is that it doesn't just say, it's not like a superstition in the sense that it doesn't say specifically, here is the external thing you should expect. It also tells you who you are.
Yes.
So this superstition placebo crossover point is interesting to me because it actually is trying to tell you how to decode the way that you act in the world and the things that you don't understand about yourself. So it's giving you a framework through which you can really start to try to understand yourself. But if it's having nocebo effects, like asterisk, I feel like these systems require nocebo because in order to believe that they work on some level, it can't be consistently positive.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense because you can't prescribe an always thumbs up.
Right.
Feels
guidebook.
Like bullshit. Right, because it would be very clearly bullshit after a week of expecting A and receiving Z and really being, kind of thrown off by that.
Being fucked. Like The Secret. Do you remember The Secret?
Oh, yeah, dude. Well, The Secret and here's where it gets into a problem again, is when it's given a platform.
Yeah.
Right? And for those who don't know, The Secret is, if you think really hard about something, it'll manifest itself. And there's a little bit of truth to that.
You make a board, right? You put up
a
pictures
vision
of the
board.
thing you want. Yeah.
And there's a lot of good advice in that if you don't take it super fucking literally.
Right.
If you have a goal and you're working towards your goal, that's fantastic. And if you are like me and you don't constantly remind yourself of your goals, you will slip. So having that board is great. It'll keep you motivated towards an end that's fantastic. What happens is when something like that is broadcast by a celebrity, and Oprah brings that on her show, and people misunderstand really kind of the core of what The Secret is. It's not, if you think really hard about winning the lottery, you're gonna fucking win the lottery. That's not how it works. That's not the kind of goal that you use The Secret to manifest.
But the thing that ends up on TV, right? The thing that ends up on Oprah's show is the one person who did win the lottery who happened to be doing The Secret when they did it.
That is so dangerous.
Yeah. Fuck that. Yeah. That's cult mentality.
Yes.
Because that's where it starts to get really dark.
Yes.
Is where people start taking advantage of other people based on systems of meaning that are supposed to generate a placebo effect for you, that are really just superstition, and they ask you to pay money.
Exactly. And that is such a slippery slope, and I feel like we see that more and more, and maybe it's just more prevalent in pop culture recently.
Yeah.
But I feel like I am way more aware today than I was 365 days ago, than I was the year before, of how many predatory cult-like things sort of exist in this. I mean, there's television shows, we're seeing a lot about Scientology.
Yep.
And yeah, it's definitely a problem.
I don't want to get too conspiracy theory-ish
Let's dive in, Ryan.
But I think that okay, so if our premise is that the placebo effect is the experience version, you have an expectation, you get it.
Yes.
And the superstition side is, here's a system of meaning that sets up those expectations, whether it be, religion or astrology or whatever it is.
Or just don't walk under a ladder.
Right. But it can be big, and they can create systems. What I want to assert is that, like, I feel like those systems can be sort of interdependent, so that if you believe that one thing can happen, you have to believe another thing can happen in a different situation.
Exactly.
And then you get more and more committed to it the more complex it is.
Right.
And then if it's complex, it becomes cultish.
Conspiracize me.
So the conspiracy here would be that I think that marketing culture has really been able to capitalize on all of the shit that we're talking about right now.
Okay.
And it goes beyond, like, the ad busters shit that I was reading when I was, a teenager or whatever, where it's just like, you don't be the corporate, like, drone or whatever. Don't be influenced by product placement. Don't be influenced by, lifestyle sales, right? So, like, a specific example of the lifestyle thing that I just absolutely hate is this Kinfolk magazine. Have you seen this before?
No, never heard of it.
It's basically
for our listeners. Yeah, let them know.
Yeah. So it's this like I'm sure a lot of people know about it. It's hilarious. It's a magazine that's basically turned this concept of like the ultimate consumer.
Yeah.
You know, like you're the smart consumer. We talked about this during groceries.
Right, like couponing or...
No, not that. Not couponing, but like you buy all the stuff that was grown right near you.
Yeah.
You have furniture that was made by somebody who gets the money. Like
the reclaimed wood from the shop down the road.
Really cool stuff when it is affecting people, right? When you're giving people money. Really lame stuff when a marketing company can say, here's the lifestyle magazine that you subscribe to that determines how you interpret what is and is not good.
That sounds dangerous.
And it has a very like appealing, very simple minimalist aesthetic. You like open a kinfolk magazine and you just see these people in like, you know, what used to be called like super hipster minimalist clothing, whatever, you know, and like with cool hair or whatever, with nice glasses, and they're in their
just
apartment,
living the life,
you know, living like what is I think of as like the Mac 2.0 life, where it's like the lifestyle that Mac wanted to sell us in the early 2000s has become the kinfolk thing, like aesthetically. But marketing companies, is what I'm saying, have taken advantage of the fact that they don't have to just sell a product to your lifestyle. They sell you a lifestyle now.
Right.
They sell you a belief system. So like if you're a subscriber, and this is true in media too, you know, this is like subscribing to the New York Times versus Fox News or whatever. It's selling you a cohesive, self-reflecting experience that basically just says you are perfect, you're doing the right thing, you're buying the fucking, what are those jeans? Like the raw denim jeans.
Oh, yeah.
You're just like the coolest, you know? It makes you feel cool. It was like the other day I was in the barber shop.
All right.
Getting a great haircut. But everyone there was talking about these boots that this one guy was going to get and what the stitching was like on those boots. And I thought like, oh, this is like the art of shavings culture. Like they're subscribed to this line of beliefs about products that they feel personally invested in that has an effect on how they see and act in the world. Yeah. And everyone has this to a certain degree.
That's real for sure. And just to touch back on like people selling a cohesive story of self to people, because in this day and age when we're so inundated with technology and messages and opinions and judgments on people. I mean, we're a very judgy culture since the advent of Twitter or Facebook, where you're putting up a facade, right? You're putting up the best picture of the last 48 hours when really you've been like pretty upset and having a shitty day, but you know, we're out in the sun and I got dressed today, so let me snap a selfie to prove that like I'm having way more fun than you, right? And it's constantly this one up.
And I'm clever, I can make the joke.
So we're putting, you know, you're giving people a prescribed version of self, which they can then reflect on their social media in an era where you're so caught up in everyone else's, you don't ever take the time to figure out what you're about.
Right.
You never sit in that silence and think, what do I believe, and filter out these packages. It's easier to pay $4.99 a month, get the Kinfolk magazine, read, go down the shopping list with your paycheck, and buy the things to fill your home and hope that makes you feel fulfilled at the end.
Which sort of touches on like the thing I'm interested in, which I haven't like fully articulated, so I'm going to try and do it now. It's all like, I think the way out, if there is one, is to just decide that it's okay that placebo exists. It's okay that we have to subscribe to systems of meaning in the world, but you have to create it yourself. Like the thing that you have to do as an individual in order to advocate for not being a part of a weird cult. That simply that doesn't seem like a negative thing, but when you're giving a thing money and when that thing could be having nocebo effects on you that you don't know about,
right?
You should be critically engaged in the ways that those systems are affecting you and subscribe intentionally to specific pieces of the ones that work best.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also want to add a caveat to that, because I think it's also our responsibility to move the idea that this is not only acceptable, but that this should be the popular idea of, if that thing works for you, that's cool, but move the idea that you are somewhat aware that it might be X, Y, and Z, or only certain portions of it work, such that you can empower other people to look beyond, look through the mirror. You can derive benefit from things that might be woo-woo.
So you're not doing the thing in that case, which is like these companies like Beachbody, right? Do you know about Beachbody?
I do not know. Tell me about Beachbody, Ryan.
There's this marketing model, and I actually almost worked for one of these companies, where instead of buying large marketing resources, leveraging normal marketing resources like magazine ads and stuff like that, you have basically what is a pyramid scheme distribution system, but it's done over social media. So you have somebody who subscribes to, you want to become a distributor for this Beachbody thing, and then you promote it on Instagram, and then you get follows because you follow all of the other people who are also doing it, and you expand the web of reach, and it's a subscription system. So it's basically like, I'm selling a lifestyle visually on Instagram, and I'm proselytizing a product. So the thing,
And you get paid when your downstream gets paid.
yes,
Yeah.
and so it is just a pyramid scheme. But the thing that you're saying is, in every situation, the individual should do exactly not that.
Yeah.
Like,
Or push the message of not Beachbod,
right.
but push the message of use this stuff if it works for you.
Do what works for you.
Right.
Right, exactly. And I feel like I feel like it would be culturally advantageous in a big way if we were more capable of saying the things that work for me are bullshit, and I know it, and it's okay. It's bullshit for someone else. It's real for me. That's the end of the story.
Yeah.
Like if people who had deep religious faith could do that, the world would be a better place.
It'd be much simpler to communicate too.
Yeah.
Because it breaks down the team mentality that exists as soon as certain topics like religion are brought up.
Yeah.
And it can't be a conversation about this works, this doesn't work, you believe, I don't believe, therefore we're never going to see common ground on this issue. It needs to be more nuanced. And I think that as a civilization, and specifically as a culture in a first world country where we're all connected, we owe that to one another to elevate the level of discourse that we're having from yay or nay, your team, my team, who's the winner, who's the loser, to creating a more cosmopolitan society.
Right, because it's not like, the response isn't what was that movie by that guy? Religulous, did you see that movie?
Is that Michael Moore? Or
No,
Bill Maher?
Bill Maher.
I did not see it, but I saw trailers.
But so I
know
saw that
the
movie.
I know the gist.
Yeah, the premise is basically like, anybody who believes in something that is not scientifically provable or is scientifically proven wrong, like, fuck you, basically.
Right.
Which I subscribed to that kind of thinking for a little while, but now I think I'm more with you, which is like, you believe in something, does it work for you? And then the conversation doesn't have to stop at like, I don't believe that thing. It can go into like curiosity. Let me learn about what you're thinking about and how, like, what are the effects that it has on you? And you will, with the belief, could be like, oh, well, I know this doesn't work for everybody, or I know that it's a placebo effect and a system of meaning I'm subscribing to that's affecting that. But here's how it has given me a positive result.
Right.
And then someone else could be like, oh, maybe I'll try that out.
Right. Exactly. And be open. And here's a perfect example of this. I do not believe in crystals. I don't.
No.
I don't believe in them.
They don't work for
But
me.
I work in a community where there are a few people who really do.
Okay.
And it's a part of their, their vibe in their office where they'll have some crystals or some sage, or it's just some general things that have stimulus effects to the person. And this is my opinion of it, is like when you burn sage, you're creating a space where you're trying to calm down. When you smell that smell, it reminds you that that is the smell you want to smell in that space. Therefore, you calm down.
Powerful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So do I think that sage has like ghost clearing, energy rejuvenating power? No. Do I believe it can return you to a baseline that will help you be your better self? Yes. So I'm not going to sit there and spend my time being like trying to convince someone that they don't actually believe in the spiritual power of it, that you believe in this scientific reason. But I'm a fidgeter. While we've been doing this podcast, I've had a pen in my hand the entire time, and I've been spinning it around, and I've been rubbing it, just getting some feedback like on my fingers. I feel the ridges of the pen. I've been clicking the cap silently. I have tried, instead of playing with a pen cap while I'm driving or playing with a pen cap while I'm sitting in a meeting, just grabbing a little rock. It's got ridges, it's got these things, and I just asked the person who is like very skilled with that of like, which one would help me like chill out.
Yeah.
I don't think that there is a negative impact for me using that rock over a pen cap to satisfy the fidgety desire of my body.
Right.
And I don't think that's a problem. Do I think I'm getting extra from it? No. If on the off chance there is some crazy science behind that, I would like to reap the benefits of it. But I know I'm not going to get it from a fucking pen cap.
Truly.
So I don't use it regularly, but I got one in my car that sometimes I play around with.
Nice. So there's actually, I guess there's one more major unpacking I want to do.
Okay.
Just a topic. Because I mentioned with astrology, it tells you how to think about yourself. Mm-hmm. And we both recently have taken Myers-Briggs tests, right?
Yeah, I see.
And I think this is similar because, okay, so you say, I'm Ryan, right? I'm existing in the world. I have sort of like potential futures that I could go down. And how I see myself affects which paths I choose, like, greatly. Because if it's reinforced in me at an early age that I'm like super good at math, I'm probably going to pursue that, right? Astrology and Myers-Briggs make a deduction about you in some way, tell you who you are, tell you what your personality type is like, and I feel like that makes you start to act in that specific way. Like, I'm an INTJ, and I feel like that is descriptive because it's like, you know, you want ownership over projects, you know, prefer certain types of thinking, certain types of problems, you respond to them in certain ways, and I've found that description to be somewhat generalizable about my life experience. But also it's probably made me capitalize on those things more.
Yeah.
Invest in those things about myself more.
Right.
So that could have a super positive effect, and I think it has for me, but it could also have a nocebo effect. And so, like, it's more important to watch out for how the belief is impacting you than it is to subscribe to the whole belief system. I don't know. How do you feel about those things in, like, identity?
Well, it's funny that you bring that up because it actually cuts to the core of what the Myers-Briggs personality test is trying to suss out. They're really trying to suss out whether or not you are able to step back and use logic to define your scenario, or whether you go based on emotion.
Right.
And I think that, like, there's this huge thing bubbling up where the advent of, like, science making things very black or white has taken away some of our ability to trust feelings and gut instincts about situations.
Right.
And again, I'm going to tread that, like, horrid middle ground where I can't ascribe, like, yay, thumbs up to Myers-Briggs or thumbs down to Myers-Briggs because it puts you in a corner. I just think that these are all tools for us to become better aware of our shortcomings and try to actively acknowledge them in our day-to-day life. Whereas if I'm someone who am overly black and white about facts, I need to be aware that I am having feelings about things that might color my interpretation of those facts.
Right.
The other side of the coin might be, if I trust my feelings way too much, I need to pay more attention to the fact that there is structure in some facets of life that needs to be understood and measured and weighed to see if it's effective in how you move forward with your life, right?
Like, those feelings aren't coming out of the ether, they're in you.
Right, they're in you.
Thought.
And I guarantee you that if you come up as a, you know, I don't know the Myers-Briggs well enough, but if you come up as the logical type and not the sensing type, that you have no sensory input in your brain to color your logic. That's bullshit. And if you come up as a sensing person, it doesn't mean that you deny logic 100%. And I think that we need to understand which way our biases lead us based on our upbringing. And we need to, as humans who are trying to, like, fight the battle of getting along with one another in one of the more divided times, we need to all acknowledge that we all have shortcomings that are different and unique from others, and we need to navigate those things individually.
Well, I think we've really covered it. I think as the Walnut Desk podcast, we have to decide, placebo, yes or no?
Let's go for it. Let's go for placebo. Let's ride that placebo train off into the sunset. As long as you know your stop, as long as you know where to get off, I think that the placebo effect can be used to your advantage. What do you think?
Placebo, yes.
Yes?
I'm going to say placebo, yes. And then sidestep, I'm going to say placebo, yes. Proselytizing, fuck no.
I agree. So you heard it here, official stance. Make sure to head over to walnutdeskpodcast.com. Check out our back episodes. Make sure to like, subscribe on our YouTube, subscribe to our podcast, iTunes, Google Play.
Yeah, and give us those damn 5-star reviews. That's like the biggest currency for a podcast. That's the best thing you can do aside from telling all your friends and family to listen. Give us those damn reviews. We'll thank you for it. If you give us a review and you actually use like your real name, we'll give you a shout out. Just let us know. Like, don't be shy. Tweet at us. Be like, hey, I gave you a 5-star review.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. Walnut Desk Podcast out. I'm Will.
I'm Ryan.
Goodbye.